With this car in particular, with Havoc, we've had some big people come on board. We've got PPG, we've got 3M, we've got PWR, and we've got Meguiar's, American Legend wheels. What we were wanting to do is to have the best products and the best people and the best companies involved so that we could use their products and then they could in turn use our car to show everyone what you can create with their products. And without those companies, we couldn't have built Havoc how you see it today. You know, PPG supplying all the paint, 3M, all the materials that we use in our steel shaping discs and belt sanders and sandpapers and everything you use. There's so much product that they have. You know, PWR, the cooling system, so important, and it's awesome to have their technology and their technicians to work with me because I've run 2 radiators in this thing, which is really weird. The supercharger runs right through the guts of the front end, and then it's got 2 separate radiators, which is really hard to sort of work out. But when you've got a company that are willing to give you their technicians and work with you, you know, it's great. And the same with American Legend wheels and Meguiar's. They're polishing stuff, you know, that's what we use to get the shine on the car that you can see. American Legends put our logo in the wheels and took their own logo out. So to have these companies involved with the build, we're honoured to be there, and we're very proud to support their products and for them to support us. Well, you've basically got to work from the ground up. So you want to get the car on its wheels, got to get it on its get all the stance sorted out first before you can start creating the body around it. So you really need to start at the bottom and work your way up to the top. So the chassis is your first part of the car that you really need to design and get exactly how you want, because you may need to change the body components, and you can do that. It's going to be quite easy to do that if you've got your base set. We really wanted to put independent rear, and that's something different in a muscle car, because everyone really runs a triangulated rear end or a parallel 4-bar, you know, with a Watts link or something like that. So we wanted to be a little bit different, bring it to a little bit more modern. So, and it's a really cool design, upper lower control arms, you can have airbags, you can have coilovers. What better way to do it than to just let them know what you want and get such a good shop involved with the build at the same time. Yeah, so the front suspension is Roadster Shop as well. And then we've run Ride Tech airbags in it instead of coilovers because we wanted to have the adjustable height. And then we've got like a NASCAR steering rack in the front and kept it left hook. This thing drives amazing, you know, like it makes such a difference to have independent rear, and it's got such a rigid, solid chassis design that, yeah, it's actually very nice to drive. It handles really well, and it puts the power to the ground neatly. Yeah, so the Roadster Shop chassis came full rolling from front to back. What you can't really see, it's the core, it's the structure of the car. So the difference with this chassis is most chassis bolt in, this one's all welded in, so the body's welded back onto the chassis. It was a bit of a, you know, the chassis is getting built in America and the car's here in Australia, it's on a table, and we get a side-to-side measurement off them from their rail to rails. And in the Challenger itself, we actually had to take some out of the seals to make the chassis fit in. So then once we've taken that out, we've replaced it all with 3mm plate. And then when we get the chassis, we pretty much, you know, in theory, you want to just roll it underneath the car, push it up into the car, and you've got your perfect gap either side to weld. And, you know, I had a couple of friends going, I hope you did your measurements right and all this, and being a bit cheeky, but they were all here the day the chassis got here. We rolled it underneath and we got a couple of jacks and we pushed it up into place and where it was meant to be, and it fit like a glove. It was perfect. So, I mean, if you did that wrong and you chopped your seals out and you just got to get your measurements right, basically. We braced the car. If you look, when you see through the build footage, you'll see steel going in all directions, and it's there until we build stuff that's strong enough to be able to cut those back out again. We don't want the car to move, so you basically jig the car up before you cut the pieces out so that when you do cut it, the car doesn't move and it still stays in the same shape as if the floor is still in it. So after the chassis goes in and you've still got this exterior shell, you need to tie back in some structural points. So the first place that we started was the rear wheel tubs. So we built an inner wheel arch, then we built a wheel tub, and then we morphed the wheel tub into the chassis, and we build the inner guards back into the outer guards, into the outer quarter panels. Because once you've got all those structures back in place and your parcel shelf and your pieces between your tubs, your car's starting to become a very strong structure again. So after we got that midsection of the car sort of finalised and the chassis in, we know the car is where it's going to sit from now on. And then we move on to the exterior shaping of the quarter panels. They are a very long quarter panel. It was very hard to keep that body line in steel. I wanted to make sure I kept it in steel. I didn't want to lose the body line and have to recreate it in Bulgur or something like that. So there was hours and hours involved of welding and filing and fine-tuning it with file finish, and then, you know, filling in a few pinholes here and there in the welds or whatever it may be. Heating and shrinking, making sure that everything tied back into the car and looked original again. So the quarter panels, where we sort of started, once we got the tubs in, we started from the back of the exterior and moved our way forward to the firewall. Because once the firewall was done, it could pretty much come off the jig. The quarter panels probably took about a week each. And then the doors were probably about a week for the two doors for just that top mid section of them. So there probably wasn't as much work involved or time involved in the changing of that body line as what there was in components like the dashboard or the wheel tubs. Like the wheel tubs were just, the amount of welding involved in the wheel tubs was just, that's what takes the time. It was actually 2 meters from start to finish of, you know, and you're running this thing through a swage machine and running swage lines all through it, and, you know, it's a big piece of steel. It's heavy, it's awkward, it's hard to work with sometimes if you're doing it by yourself. The exterior itself was kind of the quicker part, and it's probably the most revealing part and the biggest change of the car, and it's also probably one of the quickest. Yeah, we met Dave Kindig at one of the events we were at in Reno in USA, and he makes a really cool door handle, which are the door handles that we've got on the car. He actually gave us a set for free to put on our car because he wanted our car to have some of his product on it when it came back over, you know, and toured US. They're pretty hard to install. There's a lot of work involved in doing them, but when you get them right and you can get them like this, they're a flush fit door handle. And in this day and age, I think a lot of us have gone away from shaved because it just introduces too many problems if your electronics fail and you have to have a cable or a backup or whatever. So the traditional Hemi bonnet has the nostrils in it. So I wanted to keep that authentic look in there, but what they usually have is they have a section that usually bolts in, and it brings like an eyebrow over the front of the nostril. So we've actually built that exact same shape as the piece that bolts in normally, and we built it out of steel and we grafted it into the bonnet. So it's exactly the same shape, but there's not a second piece that bolts on anymore. And then the rise in the middle, I didn't want to have like a cowl or anything like that, so I tried to keep with the factory sort of line of the bonnet and just bring it up enough to fit our intake manifold under it. So if people don't know the Dodge Challenger that well, on the front of the bonnet there is usually a triangle sort of shaped alloy mould, and that usually continues around the outside, around the headlights, and actually turns into the side of the headlight grille and the whole grille assembly. So we've built that exact same shape but out of steel and welded it to the front of the steel bonnet, and the same with the guards around the outsides of the guards. So we don't have the separate moulding anymore, but it's still the same shape as original, just all one piece now. I think it's really important to keep your steel bumper bars front and rear, but I don't like how they fit factory because they've never fit good from factory on any of the old cars. So what we thought we'd do with this is keep all the same shapes as the original bar has, which we did, but we brought it in to the side so it would run with the body line, and then we pushed it back into the car so that it would run with the valance panel. But that's a ripple effect. So on the front, you know, we had to extend the valance panel. We had to play around with the guards, we had to play around with the bars, and the bracketry doesn't work anymore, the original ones. You have to make all your own brackets, and that front bar unbolts off. It's got 2 steel brackets either side, like an original one, and it bolts on out in each corner like the factory one as well. Just in itself, 3 weeks worth of work just in that front bar. Rear bar, the same, it's probably 3 weeks worth of work in that one as well. There's probably even more in the rear bar because it slots into a hole and doesn't have a valance panel that unbolts. So the rear bar, you've got to think about the tail lights because it meets up with the tail lights, and yeah, there was probably 4 to 5 weeks worth of work in the rear bar. Yeah, so obviously you're building a car and you're going to have to get to things at some stage in its life. So there's no point in putting things in that you're going to have to, you know, work for 5 or 6 hours just to get to a simple part. So in the front end of this car, we have an inspection panel behind each lower light in the valance. We have an inspection panel behind the lower mounts in the radiator. We have inspection panels inside the wheel arches so you can get to the guard bolts. And we also have inspection panels around the bonnet hinges, and that's just in the front. As you look under the car, you'll see the middle section of the car's got an inspection panel. In the middle section of the car, it's got the car's wiring, and it's got all the car's fuel lines and everything all in the same area, and it's got the airbag lines for the front airbags that run through the belly of the car as well. The gearbox itself's got a cover. We've painted the gearbox. I could have left the cover off the gearbox, but the inspection panel hides and confines our wires to our gearbox, bleed nipples for our clutch, and all the stuff that might not look too pretty. And then as you go further down the car, we've built a mandrel bent little 2-inch tube, and it goes up and around the diff all the way up into the boot, and that's where all the wiring and the air lines run from the front to the back of the car. And then on either side of that, we've actually built hard fuel lines to follow the same route. So when you look underneath this car, everything serves a purpose. When you push further back from that, you've got, in the front and rear of the car, you've got threaded holes, which are tie down points, and we just screw a tie down hook in there, and then we ratchet the car down to the car trailer. And then you go back a bit further than that, and in the back of the car, if we want to charge the battery, we've got a charging port, we just plug 2 wires in it, and on the other side of the car, we've got our isolator switch, we can turn the power off. So everything can be accessed from every part of the car, whether it be from a panel or with ease without opening the boot to get to your battery and all that sort of stuff. Down each side of the engine bay, you'll see 2 panels. If you unbolt them, one side's got the overflow tank for the twin radiators, and the other side's got the relays and fuses for the headlights. So a lot of this car, I've tried to keep all its areas to have inspection panels so that you don't have to take the guard off to get to something, or you don't have to take something to fix it and then go back into there. And I don't think it'll lose points by creating these sort of panels and nooks and crannies and, you know, panel covers and, you know, inspection panels or whatever you want to call them. I think really, if anything, they should give you some more credit for that, because you've actually thought about something and you've made it functional. The main difference between the 70 grille and the grille on this one is that I've extended the bumper bar to go back to the ribbed area, whereas in the factory grille they extend that ribbed area to go to the bumper bar. If you look at it, it's still Challenger, and it was challenging. There was that much work involved in getting that front end and the headlight section in that we nearly threw the towel in a couple of times, just because it was just getting way too hard. The first set of headlights we had built just didn't work. They weren't right. They just didn't look right. But we got there in the end, and we were pretty happy with the end result. And the center section of each headlight is what's in the Dodge Demon, the new Challenger. And they've got this little eyeball looking sort of headlight, which is the projector headlight that we used inside this. It is pretty cool having the late model sort of headlights, because they work properly and you turn them on. And I mean, just the halos on these, you could nearly drive with the brightness of the halos on these. And the halos are white, and then when you put your blinker on, they turn amber. So having modern technology in an old car is just awesome, because you don't need to have a separate blinker. So the factory Challenger does have a driving light in it anyway, and it's a round driving light. I've actually used a 69 Camaro light in there and modified it to shape, and then I've reshaped the valance to suit the light. So on the late model Dodge Challengers, they've still got the 2 either side headlights, and they've got the down the bottom light and the round in the valance panel as well. So it was really important to keep that. I didn't want to take anything off the front end, I just wanted to make it as if it was built today. Artistically, it doesn't matter if you're a house builder or you're an architect or whatever. It doesn't matter if you're a florist or a car builder. The artistic side of things has to come into play when you're designing this stuff, and that's where you have to think about all the different textures, colours, finishes, but you've got to not overdo it. I was pretty set on having a satin underbody, centre of the wheels, and a different coloured rim outer barrel. And then I thought, well, if you did the underbody of the car all satin, you did all the control arms and everything satin, and everything's just going to disappear. So I wanted it to stand out and be like a work of art, you know. So we went with the full satin underbody, and every single component that bolts on suspension-wise or mechanically is all done in gloss. Now they are the same colour, the 2 colours that you see. One's just got matte clear on it, and one has got a gloss clear on it from PPG. Their matte clear is amazing. It makes things look anodised, and that's what I love about it. The only downside is if you get anything in the paint, you live with it. you can't sand it out. You can't cut and polish it because then you'll make it shiny. So you've got to have such a clean booth. And when I was painting that's where 3M come into it. You know, we use their dirt trap on the walls in the spray booth, and their PPS2 cups that we use, and they've got little micron filters in the top, and all this stuff is so critical when you're putting all these products onto the car to get it flawless, because the interior of the car's all satin too. I painted all that in one go, and I'm crawling around in there trying to not touch it with my leg or get me butt to hit something, and you're crawling around in there in all these positions spray painting, and if you get one bit of fluff in there, or a bit of dirt or a bit of dust or even an eyelash fall off into it, you know, you can't fix it. So the satin was very challenging, or the matte clear was very challenging, but you just had to make sure that all your products were working perfect, and that's where, like I said, people like 3M come into it. And so the brakes we went with on this car are Bayer, and we went with the same size front and back, 6-spot calipers. We did put the car's name on the brakes, but we just did that to customise the brakes a little bit too, you know, to match in with the wheels. I think if you're looking through a wheel, you need to fill the hole up with a pretty nice, nothing looks better than a big ass brake and a nice rotor. And at the end of the day, if you got 1400 horsepower, you got to stop. You can't just run tiny little brakes on the thing because it ain't going to work. So the wheels that we're running on the car are a 3-piece wheel. They're American Legends. They're called a Black Hawk. We just got them in raw finish, and we took the 3-piece wheel apart. We painted them. So you've got an outer barrel and inner barrel, and you've got your centerpiece, which creates your 3-piece wheel. Quite a lot of work, because you've got to paint the outer barrel, the inner barrel, the center of the wheel. You've got to bolt it up, and we can't do it here, but you've got to put it on a dial machine, make sure all your bolts are done up evenly so your wheel's true. Then you've got to seal the 2 barrels together again so you can fill it with air and it doesn't leak air out anywhere. So there's a massive process. I've never had to take wheels apart like that before and paint wheels in all separate pieces. So even just coming down to the bolts, we powder coated every bolt. So trying to put them back on without scratching them, but making sure they were done up properly, you know, that was a massive, massive task, but American Legend helped us out with those.